This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There is safety in numbers.
This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. The information provided in our podcasts is for general information uses only and is not intended as legal advice. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own. Always consult with a qualified professional before making safety and security decisions. For more information about this topic, check out our website at safesecure360.com.
Welcome back to the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There's safety in numbers. Today's episode, we're talking about shootings and red flag laws that are sometimes not working and allowing persons that shouldn't have a firearm the ability to legally purchase one. I think you'll find it interesting and maybe learn some things from it. So thank you for joining us.
Over the past 3 years, there have been a number of incidents of mass shootings where the family or another governing body, in one case the military, has said that this person is mentally unstable and they're alarming us. These people are still achieving their goals of getting a firearm, going into public, and hurting people, killing people. What's going on here? Why is it so difficult for families or for people that shouldn't have firearms? What is stopping the family from reporting them and reporting their concerns about their family members?
I think there's multiple reasons. One may be fear that if they do report someone with a diagnosed mental illness or someone who's been institutionalized for some type of mental illness and then possesses a firearm or is less than truthful on their ATF application to purchase a firearm, or the family knows that the person has access to a firearm, there may be many motivations as to why not tell that story. But also what comes to mind are two things in Texas. The Allen, Texas shooting at the mall in Allen, Texas, and the Sutherland Springs church shooting. Both of those incidents have a similar component to them. Both of them, the shooters, were either dishonorably discharged or medically discharged from the armed services because of actions that they took or their psychological state that they exhibited to others. And once they were out of the military, they either obtained a gun on their own from someone or actually purchased a gun and was less than truthful in their answers to qualify them to own that firearm. So I think maybe a stigma exists also about being in that circle of someone who is or has been exhibiting some type of mental illness that is of concern. It certainly doesn't mean that anyone with a mental illness diagnosis is harmful to others. That's not my point. My point is if a person exhibits behaviors or broadcasts their intentions to harm others or does things that are concerning to public safety, then that information, I feel, should be shared. There's a lot of talk about red flag laws and how do medical and mental health institutions and providers in the military share information with local law enforcement. I think that there is value in protecting our police officers for sure by giving them a heads up that maybe the person you're dealing with or maybe the person that we're looking at as a suspect in a crime that's occurred or one that may occur is very valuable. So I think from a public safety perspective, persons with mental illness who have exhibited violence or threats of violence to others, it's very important to have some type of process in place where we can get ahead of that.
So I'm hearing you say that maybe there isn't a global organized way to report something like this, report dangerous behavior, or a specific organization that deals with. Our red flag laws are by state, is that right?
Well, I think there's certainly a federal rules that prohibit you from purchasing a firearm in their realm by answering certain questions. Have you ever been diagnosed with a mental illness that's severe, or have you been hospitalized for it? Have you addicted to drugs, or you have some intention to harm someone? I think those are questions that are on an ATF application, which could be lied about. And you answer no or you answer yes, and it's opposite really of what your situation is. So I think that institutions that guide or that guard or hide information about mental illness, especially when it's directed towards threat behavior, is probably not a great idea, because the officers on the street, or victims perhaps, should have the right to know this information, and that may shape or change their approach. SAFESECURE 360. We are a security consulting group located in the Woodlands, Texas. We assist our multiple clients by reducing their risk, loss, and reputation impact. We also do full security assessments on their facilities, large churches, large private schools in Texas, and we want to help you. Take a look at our website, safesecure360.com.
So you've been talking about Sutherland Springs and the Allen shootings that were both previous military. There's another two shootings, one in Georgia and one in Houston, both from this year, Lakewood Church and Appalachia High School, where in both of these cases, the family members had contacted somebody saying, I'm worried about my person. In one case, there was a mom that called the school the day of the shooting and said, my son is dangerous. And then in the other case, there was an aunt that I saw interviewed that said, we've been trying to reach out to find somebody to talk to. It seems like people are having a hard time finding the right person to tell about what they're concerned about. What could help them with that? Who would be the right person to tell?
Certainly in an emergency situation, or in an urgent or imminent situation where someone learns of the plans, or someone tells someone, I'm about to engage in a shooting, that is a 911 for sure moment. To let 911 know what's going on and what's been told. The police can figure out the rest. But in an urgent situation like that, where the one you're talking about, the child or young adult left with a firearm, stating, or through a manifesto or posting or some type of broadcast, that they were going to teach a lesson to the school that damaged them, or going to pay someone back, or retribution is the plan, that's a 911 phone call. And be very specific in that phone call as to who we're talking about. What are they wearing? What type of firearm do they have? Or are there multiple firearms? Where are they going? Where did they say they're going to go? How long ago was this? Where do you think they are now? Is there any history, criminal history, or any psychiatric or psychological problem history with violence? All of this information is critical on the front end as first responders attempt to make the scene safe where this person may or may not go. So sharing information that's timely and accurate is very important. It's helping the resolution, not harming it. And I think that a responsible person would want that outcome.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. You said earlier that sometimes stigma might prevent a family member from they might feel like they're betraying a family member or something like that. So in a case of a non-emergency where someone's worried about, they're seeing a lot of talk about violence or a lot of talk about the school, and they're starting to get concerned, what kind of steps could they take at that not so emergency level? It's not a 911 call yet, but it's something. How do they talk to each other or find a resource to help their family?
I think de-escalating those thoughts and those concepts is a great idea. I think removing the access to firearms is another good idea if that's possible. I think that in our school settings, certainly if that information is developed during the school period, the counselors are very good in the schools and the psychologists in the schools about developing that and recording that and notifying agencies that need to know that. But I think on a personal level, if that occurred, it's certainly important to try to de-escalate or diffuse that situation, maybe involve friends or family members who are better with rapport with the person concerned about. And then certainly if that does not work or it continues to escalate, I think that the next step would be involve professional help in counselors or in some type of therapy perhaps to have this person become more manageable or less of a risk. But ultimately, if someone is threatening to imminently harm someone or multiple people, they have the means to do so, 911 and involving our first responders is a very important step.
Definitely. An emergency is an emergency, and it's good to report these things. There's a theme in the last few episodes that have been talking about properly reporting to helpful people what you're seeing. See something, say something has been something we've talked about for a long time. You wrote a blog on our website, SAFESECURE360.com. It's called We Are Missing the Warning Signs. And I think that's so aptly titled that in these examples, there are these big warning signs, and it requires, see something, say something requires someone to listen too. How could we be more effective at communicating with each other, both the communicator seeing something and then the person listening? How could they more effectively understand, listen, and help to the person that's reporting with them?
See something, say something sounds so fundamental, so easy and so light, but really it has big value. These active shooters, especially in school environments, going back to Columbine in Colorado in the 90s, they told you what they were going to do. They will tell you when they're going to do it. A lot of them will. They will broadcast to their friends, don't be in the science class at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Or they will say, don't go to school or you'll be sorry, or I'm going to show you what needs to happen. Those pre-event broadcasts do occur, and we need to listen as school administrators, as family members, as people who interact with someone who may be emotionally unsound, psychologically unsound, and may have an agenda or a plan, and they have the opportunity to do it, and they have the ability to do it, especially if there is a firearm or a weapon available to them. Are we listening to them? And if we are listening to them, are we taking it seriously? Are we sharing that information with others who can intervene and perhaps stop an event before it becomes tragic.
I think that I went to school for counseling, you went to school for psychology. Uh, there's a lot of talk about when someone is telling you something personal, you want to develop trust and continue a relationship. But in some cases, when they're saying, don't be in math class tomorrow at 4 p.m., I think your responsibility then goes broader than just that person's trust, where it's a good idea to start telling people because you can really help affect the safety of the people around you. And maybe some emphasis should be placed on this reporting is a really good thing, and they trusted to tell you maybe so that you would stop them and help them with this.
Yes, certainly it could be an outcry from the person who doesn't want to do this, but perhaps psychologically they are driven or directed to do so and can't resist those temptations. So I think that rather than writing it off and saying, oh, that's just the way he is, or that's just some of the things that she says, when they become more significant or more frequent or more planned out or written down or drawings drawn, those should all be signs and indicators that we should take this a little more seriously. And we should get ahead of this before it turns into a possible tragedy.
So those are some, are there any other examples of behaviors that would maybe show that this is something that's on the horizon? One of them, I believe it was the Georgia shooter, had a shrine of other shooters above his computer, photos printed out of them, and was sort of starting to glorify them. Certainly texting people, telling them not to come to class, or saying, I'm going to show up at the mall later, beware. Those are obvious signs. Are there other signs we can see that this is sort of an ideation that's starting to happen, or that the person is leading into uncomfortable territory that we should start to talk to them about?
I think abrupt changes in personality or in rage or anger or making exaggerated claims or perhaps talking about plans or focusing on one school or institution or church or group of people that is farther out than an opinion designed to influence you in some way, but the language begins to talk about ending them or making them feel what that person's feeling or teaching them a lesson or becoming famous for something that I'm going to do in school tomorrow are all clues or could be indicators that this abrupt change in personality that begins to enter dangerous behavior or threats of violence certainly is a point of concern.
I think something that goes along with this, we talk about this when we talked in an earlier episode, I recall, about hearing a gunshot. You go through a period of denial, probably, as a person in a crowd. You think, well, that couldn't be a gun. I think the same thing happens here sometimes too, that I've known this person my whole life, and you're going through a period of denial. Or as the school in Georgia, when the mom called, they must have thought, well, you're overreacting. It's not what you think is going on that's really happening. How do we face that denial and catch the warning sign rather than missing it one more time?
Denial is a real instinct that we have that protects us from realizing the potential of something that's really bad. So to think that someone you know or a sibling or a daughter or a son could be capable of some of these horrific incidents is just hard to get there. But if you watch the signs along the way, in some instances, again, they will tell you that they're being led to this from political pressure, from religious pressure, from other types of influences they were bullied, or they've been ashamed or embarrassed, or they have been harmed in some way. And now it's their turn to set the record straight. And sometimes that's a low-level response. Sometimes it's a terrible shooting where multiple people are killed. So how do you know the difference? I think that involving family members, trusted friends, medical professionals, psychological professionals is a valid thing to do, with the purpose of stopping this from happening before it gets to that point, to where the plan that the person has is enacted.
When we're talking about active shooters, like back to Columbine, there used to be this sort of guideline about what an active shooter looks like. Has that changed over the years? Is it still, originally it was kind of a young white male mad at the school, was kind of the impression that the news gave me. How has that changed over the years, what the stereotype is?
That's a good question. Yeah, if you would have asked me to profile an active shooter, I would have told you a male, white, 17 to 29 years old, disassociative behavior, kind of a loner. I would have told you those types of things, but all of a sudden, here we have Nashville, a recent shooting attempt with a female or a trans female shooter, an alumni from that school. It was like a Christian-based school, and although I haven't seen, I don't think their full manifesto has been released yet, they were angry at the school for making them conform to a certain set of Christian values, which were in conflict with their internal ones. It's much more complex than that, I'm sure, but I haven't seen the manifesto. And a lot of times these shooters will make intricate manifestos talking about injustice or talking about how they were a victim and how now it's their turn to reverse that trend. So, so Nashville, here comes the female, and then Lakewood Church, not only in Houston, Texas, not only here comes the female, but here comes a 7-year-old child with the female, apparently the child of the shooter. So that's throwing, there have been female active shooters in the past, but it's very rare. So all of a sudden we have this female with a child. Is the child a shield? Are they bringing them to protect them from gunfire? Because a police officer or a first responder or a security person wouldn't want to shoot a child, obviously. So why are they bringing this child? I don't know, but I think that, and the child was shot during this resolution at Lakewood, and so was the shooter killed. So we didn't have a chance to interview her to see, why would you do this? Why would you do it anyway? So I think that the face of, people ask me when I present about active shooter to institutions and schools and churches, what does an active shooter look like? Why can't the police stop it? Why can't you predict when the next one's going to come? Why can't you protect us? Those are very complex things. And the answer is, look for the signs. Look for the indicators that may heighten your attention or interest in someone who is capable of doing this. A lot of times, they'll tell you.
That's amazing. What I hear you saying is great advice for this problem. Has to do with alienation in some way. I don't know how you, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know how you could mentally prepare yourself to go through with an active shooting without feeling pretty alone, I imagine, is part of that feeling. So what you're saying is, listen, that might save somebody's whole pathway of, I have a friend that listens to me. It might alert you to call 911. It might alert you to just talk to the kid's parents. But really listening to people when they're telling you things and trying to understand what they're actually saying seems like a really good solution to this. If we're missing the warning signs and they're telling us the warning signs, we're not hearing them right. And so more attention could be placed on listening and hearing people, certainly.
Active shooters are not over. And we used to think in Texas, oh, it's a New York thing, or it's a California thing, or it's something to do with polarizing beliefs and things. But then we started seeing shootings in Texas, in Dallas, and we started seeing Sutherland Springs, and we saw Allen, and we saw Santa Fe. Santa Fe, Texas, a city near the coast towards Galveston, a school shooting, horrific. So I think that school shootings are a place of choice because you have a lot of people in one area. They're children. They're typically defenseless. So when their parents drop them off for school that morning, they want them back in the afternoon, a little smarter, a little more socially aware, with no trauma or injury to them. So it's incumbent upon the school and the leadership to analyze that school setting. Is it a safe school? Is it a place where we've taken our security policy and really have a good one? Has the school been evaluated by security experts? That's what we do. We do assessments that assess multiple aspects of, is this a safe place, school, church, business? And we make best practice recommendations to heighten security through electronics, through training, through drills, through policy, through infrastructure. But it all starts with buy-in from leadership. Do we want a safe environment? And I think that we saw in Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, not long ago, a complete systemic breakdown of policy, of training, of adherence to it, of law enforcement response. Everything failed. And look at the results. We've got to do a better job. We owe it to the public that we serve to do a better job. So I'm optimistic that more and more training is occurring and that more and more technology is being used. And a great example is Raptor Technologies. We endorse them. They do multiple things, but one of the things they do is they credential visitors and check them, background, before they enter a school. And they do other things as well. But Raptor has that vision, and Raptor has that understanding that we need to do a better job of the electronic and technology side, but you must also have the human side. And I think balancing that in policy and training all together is a really good approach.
That's absolutely right. There's not a way that technology alone can fix this, but technology can certainly aid human efforts in listening, caring, reporting, understanding, and responding to even small warning signs as we get smarter about this and as we get more in tune with what we're looking at, really. We can start to pick up on smaller warning signs and start to act sooner. Having a reaction planned is based on a policy that you have already set up, but in order to get to the policy, you have to recognize that something's happening. So I think that there are some great strides in people trying to understand what's leading up to this, trying to understand the psychology, and understand how we can prevent this before it starts. You have any advice for schools on how to prevent this? People are targeting schools and churches. Again, they're innocent. They're places where you go to be innocent, and so that's why they get targeted. hiring a security professional team and having them look at your policy and look at your structure is a great way to get started to make sure you're ready for a response.
Yes, we proudly serve many schools and churches and private clients and industry all throughout Texas, and that's our goal. Prevention. Preventing the event from occurring stops the reaction or response that's necessary if you can prevent it. And there's a lot of complex things to consider when you're preventing things, but I think that a good, sound security policy, a living document that can change over time when new strategies come to play and new technologies developed and new ways of thinking about prevention of these types of tragic events. If you have buy-in from your leadership and you have a good relationship with a security consulting group, I think you're on the right track.
I think so too. I think this is a human issue, and the only way to do it is together, really. And I'm grateful for your insight into this. This is difficult stuff to talk about, but the only way to get better at this is to do what we're doing, to keep circling around it till we find something that we can do to help. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this?
I think that this was a very valid topic, and I hope that our listeners were able to listen and apply some of this information that we have. See our website, SAFESECURE360.com, for additional information. We provide these services, and we are always learning before we teach.
That's true. And if you'd like to learn more about what we're talking about, tune in next week. Click the like, subscribe, the follow button, tell your friends about this show, and please write into us. What subjects would you like to hear us talk about? We're here to teach what we have learned over time, so help communicate with us and help us understand what you want to hear more about. Well, thank you so much for listening. This is the Safe Secure 360 podcast. See you next time. Well, thank you for listening. We could not do this show without you, the audience, and we're very grateful for you. To hear more about what we're talking about, go ahead and go over to our website, SAFESECURE360.com, or look for new episodes of our show. Feel free to like and subscribe, follow us, tell your friends about us. We're here to offer something to you, and we're so glad for your support in doing it. Thank you.
Safe Secure 360 podcast. There's safety in numbers.